Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on Clemson Football at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for joining me. We got a special episode for you guys tonight. Not only is Jordan Bowman waiting in the back, waiting to join us, but we got our buddy Brian Knight from Clemson Football Live with us to break down Clemson football today. We're going to talk basically just our views on Clemson heading into the 2024 season. We're going to do a little season preview, if you will, and just chop it up for about an hour or so about Clemson football. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am. But before we get into tonight's show, if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. We're at about 5,100 subscribers so far and slowly growing. So thank you guys for that. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring all the college football fans. No, they don't just have to be Clemson Tiger fans. We welcome all fan bases here to join us here at Clemson Football, at the Voice of College Football, and more importantly, the All In Show every Friday night here at 5:30. Also, this is a live video. We got 16 people in the live chat right now. So please go ahead and hit that like button while you are in here. It really helps us out on these live videos. And without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight?
Oh man, I'm pumped. I can't even really understate it. I mean, I've been waiting on this show for a while, like all week. Like I've just been kind of anticipating it because, getting a special guest on like this is always it always means a little bit more. And the person we have on today certainly is going to bring it. So I'm really excited. So I can't really wait that much longer. Let's bring him on.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. Let's waste no time. And let's go ahead and get our buddy Brian on tonight, the star of the show, the man, the myth, the legend. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Guys, I'm a little embarrassed right now. I'm just filling out a 1-800 flowers order. If y'all just give me another 10 seconds, I'm just kidding. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us, Brian, man. We've been trying to line up our schedules. I know everybody out there in the comment section doesn't know this, but us three have been trying to line up our schedules for quite some time. And, due to life in general for all of us, we haven't been able to do so. But tonight, the stars align, and I think everyone in the live chat is in for a great show.
I have been trying to line it up even on my show, and we've had some hit and miss. Gene, I've had you on. Jordan, we just hadn't been able to line up, so I'm glad to be here tonight. And we've all known one another for a while now, so it's awesome to be here. It's awesome to be within 2 weeks of Clemson and Georgia in Atlanta, so I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And once again, it's just really an honor to have you on the show. We were kind of chopping it up before the show about, Bobby kind of making his appearance, his comeback, so to speak. And he was kind of a little angry at us in the community post.
Yeah, Bobby Durkins was taking some shots at us in our community post.
I think he got into the corn liquor or something. I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, he's been tearing it up on his channel as well. But Brian, before we kind of dive on into it, go ahead, plug your stuff and wherever people can find you.
Yeah. You can find me at Clemson Football Live on YouTube, which has crossed over 4,000 subscribers, coming up on 2 years. Actually, the 31st when Clemson and Georgia plays, that's actually the 2-year anniversary of that channel. And of course, Bobby Durkins, the alter ego. A lot of people still believes that Bobby's a real person. We're just going to run with that and have some fun with it. But drop by it. We talk Clemson football, talk college football overall. So stop by. Whether you hate the look on my face or love it, I hope you'll subscribe and say that you saw me on this channel.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, without further ado, let's kind of dive on in.
Let's go ahead and dive into the show. You guys be sure to check out Brian's channel, Clemson Football Live. Again, tons of great videos. He's over there going live all the time. Great stuff. Not for the faint of heart if you are a sunshine pumper.
Yeah.
but he will give you the raw truth and his feelings on Clemson football without a doubt. So if that's something you're into, be sure to check out his channel. Show him some love and tell him that you came over here from Clemson football at the Voice of College Football. But guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into tonight's show, and let's talk about Clemson football, because let's face it, that's what everybody here in the comment section's here for, and that's what us three have been trying to get together to do for the longest time. So let's spend majority of our time chopping it up about the thing that we're here to talk about, and that is Clemson football. First and foremost, I kind of want to lay the groundwork for us and just kind of get our thoughts on, this offseason. Look, us as Clemson fans, let's be honest, it's been a rough 3 seasons, okay? Clemson has clearly taken a step back for 3 seasons in a row. Some of that is due to maybe coaching staff. Some of that is due to injuries. Some of that is due to some talent maybe not working out for the Tigers. There's a myriad of reasons for Clemson's regression as far as a prominent football program, right? But a lot of good things have happened in Clemson football recently. We have recently added Garrett Riley to as an offensive coordinator. We've recently added Matt Luke as an offensive line coach, Chris Rump as a defensive end coach. So a lot of good coaching hires, I think, in the recent future have happened. And I think we've acquired some talent that have filled some gaps that may have been there before. So one of the things that I want to start off with, and you guys can kind of take this wherever you will, questions for Clemson football heading into the 2024 season as we sit right now. Camp just ended today. The last camp practice happened. They start Georgia prep on Sunday. So, the season's pretty much here, fellas. So what are your big questions for Clemson football heading into the 2024 season?
Well, I'm going to tee up Brian here, because I'm going to ask a very specific question. And I'm going to tee up the both of you here, because you just kind of went through it. The offseason has been honestly a lot of positive, at least from a vibes and feelings standpoint. So my real question is, are we buying it? Because we've been burned pretty bad as a fan base for the past few years. We've heard good things about the offense. Oh man, whether it was DJ or Cade, it's like, oh man, he looks so much more improved. The receivers we're getting more explosive. Offensive line, we're deeper, and we've got 10 scholarship guys that we feel like can play, on Saturday. So are we buying it? I think that's the real question.
I can't remember which state has the slogan "Show me," the "Show me" state, and that's where I'm at with the Clemson offense. Over the past few years, let's be honest with ourselves, that if we did not have the defensive play across the board, the defensive coaching, we would be in trouble. Even now, we're having a problem kicking. I read a little earlier that Hauser is a little out in front of Gunn, which kind of makes me sick on my stomach that we don't have a definite, clear-cut kicker. Yeah. So here we are. But, it doesn't make you a bad Clemson fan to be jaded over the past 3 years, 10-3, 10-3, 9-4, the debacle last year. And, going into last year's game with Duke, even on my channel, I said, hey, they've got a fantastic quarterback. Mike Elko can coach. And, we need to be careful going into that game. But 28-7, tons of turnovers, a lack of playability and execution. None of us would have ever dreamt that was going to happen. So it's not bad for us to look at this game with the front runner for the national championship. You may hate Georgia like a root canal, but the truth is, right now, Georgia is the front runner for the national championship. Kirby's doing something different down there, and they are where we were, right? We, like Gene said earlier, we declined. We have declined, and that's hard to say because even at a decline, we're still 9 wins, 10 wins. There's so many teams in the country that would kill for that. But I think guys like us who eat, sleep, breathe Clemson football, heck, I grew up literally right there at Clemson. I remember the Danny Ford days, the Hatfield days, the Tommy West days, the Tommy Bowden days, obviously. Now, I remember it. And it's much more than just a team I pulled for or a school that I went to. It's a community that I was raised in. So anytime that you question whether a team that you dearly love is as good as they once were, obviously it's going to stir emotions. And I see that all the time. But it is not wrong for us logically. Let's just say we take the Tiger Paw. Let's just take it out of it. Let's just look at a team who had success and then look at the past 3 seasons, what's transpired. It is not wrong for someone to use their common sense or logic and say, hey, I'm not going to be burned this season. So there's good things for us to look forward to in this year, but there's a lot of show me on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Brian, look, I think you make a lot of good points. And I think any logical and any Clemson fan that's being honest with themselves agree with a lot of not only what you just said here, but a lot of what you say on your channel. Sometimes as fans, it's hard to hear, and we don't like to hear it, especially about our favorite team, because let's face it, what's fan short for? Fanatic,
yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
We are very emotional about the Clemson Tigers, especially guys like us that grew up. I came home from the hospital literally in a Clemson outfit, right? Like that's how deep it runs in my family, right? Like this was an at birth thing. I didn't get a choice, right? It was Clemson Tigers my entire life, right? And going to the stadium with my dad and, all those memories that you have, right? And you got deep-seated emotions when it comes to the Tigers, right? But as fans, we have to be honest with ourselves as well, right? So I think one of the things that me and Jordan, if you've been listening to our channel all off season, is, we acknowledge the growth that Clemson has gone through this offseason, right? Some of the positive changes that have happened within the program from a coaching staff standpoint, and then from a recruiting standpoint as well, bringing in some young talent. You think of a TJ Moore, you think of a Brian Westco, you think of an Antonio Williams coming off a year of injury. There's several things that you can point to with this Clemson team that would give you reasons to be optimistic about the season. But what me and Jordan have kind of touted on this channel all offseason is cautious optimism. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken all offseason with the Tigers. I see, and it's hard, right? Because I am so emotionally invested in the Tigers, and I want them to get back to national prominence like we were. And I see some signs that those things could happen. So it's hard not to dive into the deep end. But because of the last 3 seasons, and because, like Jordan mentioned, we've been fooled before, right? I am staying with the cautious optimism. I like some of the things that I'm hearing. I don't like everything I'm hearing. Let's face it. It's not all sunshines and roses. It's not all good. But I like a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing. And it seems that the tide is turning. However, just like you said, Brian, it's a show me. You got to prove it on the field. Cade Klubnik has reportedly had a great fall camp. He's got to prove it on the field. Guess what? It don't matter what you do in fall camp. Come August 31st, when Georgia Bulldogs are standing across from you and the ball's about to be kicked off, no one cares how many passes you completed in camp. No one cares about how many summer sessions you did with your wide receivers and how much chemistry you guys built up. It's about what you do on the field at that point. And that's where a lot of Clemson fans are, and I think that's where all 3 of us are, is we are at a show-me point right now, especially when it comes to the Clemson offense. The Clemson defense, they can get the benefit of the doubt. And there's some questions along our defense, and we'll probably get into that within the show tonight, but they get the benefit of the doubt from me because of their proven success, right? The offense, not so much. It's kind of a show me, and that's kind of where I'm at. And, a lot of it is it looks good, but again, we'll see what happens when the ball's kicked off and the snaps are live and you're going against the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way. I don't really want to reiterate because you guys basically nailed it. I don't want to repeat that. It's kind of a good segue, when we're talking about that opener against Georgia and, how everything has been kind of building up to this moment. I know that, Dabo has kind of reiterated, the season is not defined by this one game and all of that. but it is an important game. I mean, it's always playing Georgia has always been an important game. So, we're not going to do a full like Georgia preview. That's going to be next week. So y'all make sure to tune in for that. But as far as like the magnitude of, what this game means for Clemson, not just from a wins and losses standpoint for this season, but for an overall program stature standpoint, like how big is it? Because I'm of the opinion that this game is massive, not from a, whether you win or lose, but whether you look like you belong on the same field. I think that's one of the telltale signs is if, Clemson is competitive and looks like they belong and they're not, making the same mistakes that they were last year. If Georgia flat out beats them because they're more talented, that's life. That's just the reality of the situation. But if you're losing and you're getting blown out because you're fumbling on handoffs and you're not punching it in the red zone and you're turning the ball over, the same stuff that we saw last year, like that obviously is not a very good sign and not a very good precursor for the rest of the year, as we saw, because the last couple of openers have kind of been precursors of things to come. So you guys kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this game is massive from a program stature and kind of just a feeling and, direction standpoint.
I really like where you went there. It's not necessarily about winning the game. It's do you look like you belong? And that's where we're at in this program. While you were talking, I was like, hold on, I want to look at the line. I knew it was 14 points, but I was typing here to pull up the game info. Right now, Georgia is sitting at an 82% chance of winning this ball game. Now, I want you to think about that. That is how convinced a lot of people are that Georgia is going to dominate this game. And for me, looking at Clemson, obviously, I believe what Vince Lombardi said. If you show me a good loser, you've shown me a loser. I really believe that. I love that competitive edge. So, obviously I want Clemson to win this ball game. But if they come in there and they play like they belong, okay, all right, some things have been fixed. Okay? We have a full season ahead of us that we can look forward to. We have a very manageable schedule. NC State at home hasn't beat Clemson in Death Valley since 2002 when a guy named Phillip Rivers, and this was like 16 children ago with Phillip Rivers. You have him. Florida State, we do have to respect Florida State, but we know their quarterback very well, and we know what throws him. After that, you've got a couple of games you have to keep an eye on for a potential upset, but this schedule is extremely manageable. But what happens, like you said, if Clemson goes in there and they're playing football like the red hat ladies, they're fumbling the ball, there's miscommunication. Georgia has them running for their life on the offensive side of the ball, and we know the defense. You talked about the defense just a second ago. The defense, anytime you see our defense not do well, it's because they've been on the field forever or put in a terrible position by the offense, turning over the ball or this, that, and the other. So, the point for me is do they play like they belong? And that's what I'm really looking forward to. And what kind of bothers me, not to jump ahead just in case you had this on, as one of the subjects to talk about, I listened or read the notes from Dabo's comments from yesterday, the final practice, and he was praising the team, but he said something that really bothered me. He said, yeah, we had some fumbles. And I went, oh God, not again. We're at 2 weeks before Clemson plays Georgia. And when you hear that, yeah, go ahead and get that out now. But guys, this is not 2 months before you play Georgia. This is 2 flipping weeks. So I'm with you. Jordan, 100%. Just go out there and look like you belong. And if you get beat playing a man's game, but you look like you belong, I'll hate it, but I'll accept it. If you go out there and get beat like the redheaded stepchild, different story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both of you guys make a lot of good points. And, I won't reiterate anything you guys said. It's an important game. Everybody knows it. Um, College football, much like a lot of things, are about narratives. Um,
Yeah.
right? And there's a certain narrative around the Clemson program right now. And the only way to start changing that narrative is to go out and win football games. And the next best thing you can do, if you can't beat Georgia, you have to look like you belong, just like you guys said. And I think that cannot be understated. It is so important. You can't go out there and lay an egg. You can't go out there and get blown off the field. You have to look like you belong. And if you happen to pull it out and win, that's awesome. If you happen to come up just short, you can live with it. It's not fun. No one ever wants to lose a game. Make no mistake
especially
about
to
it.
that team,
Especially with Georgia, especially with them pouting the record against us that they have. I'm so sick of hearing about it, but they got the bragging rights, right? They have dominated the series from a numbers standpoint. You definitely don't want to lose to that team. But the last thing you can afford to do with Clemson and where their program is currently right now in 2024, you can't afford to go out and lay an egg and get blown out and look like you don't belong. That's the one thing you can't do. And we still got a lot to talk about here, so we'll go ahead and leave that Georgia game here. And I want to continue going with these questions for Clemson football. And Brian, one thing that you said kind of triggered something in my mind, and it's something that you said was pretty interesting. And you talked about some, Dabo talking about the turnovers, right? So there was an interception. The last scrimmage, they did a lot of ones versus twos. According to Dabo, the offensive line and the defensive line, the first team did exactly what they were supposed to do against the second team. So that's encouraging news. Not encouraging to hear there were 3 turnovers. One was an interception, one was a fumble recovery, and the other fumble was recovered by the offense. So they got it back. But there was 3 times they put the ball in harm's way, at least, right? So that's not encouraging. One of the other things, I want to flip it to the other side of the ball and talk about the defense, right? I talked about there are questions along the defense, although us as Clemson fans, because of, top 10 after top 10 defensive performance over the past, I don't know what, 15 seasons it's been now, or whatever it's been, right? We give the defense the benefit of the doubt. There's been some injuries come out of camp, namely Shelton Lewis and Jaden Lucas, right? Those 2 guys went into fall camp kind of competing for that second cornerback spot, right? We got Avion Terrell. He's locked in. He's cornerback number 1, right? Cornerback number 2 is kind of up in the air. Is it going to be Shelton Lewis? Is it going to be Jaden Lucas? Which one's going to be healthy? Well, both of them, according to Dabo Swinney, are still currently day-to-day. So my question to you guys is, and my question overall for the defense, are we going to have to end up – we're already leaning on young guys. Shelton Lewis is a young guy, true sophomore, right? Jaden Lucas, he's not a young guy, but he doesn't have a ton of experience because he's just not been available, right? So are we going to have to rely on true freshmen? And we're talking Ashton Hampton, Corey Gibson, Tavoy Fegan. Are we going to have to rely on guys like that in the secondary and possibly not be as buttoned up in the secondary as we think we might be in the 2024 season? What are your guys' thoughts on these injuries and some of the questions at the cornerback position for the Clemson Tigers heading into 2024?
Yeah, you hit on it. I think for the long term, you have to feel really good about the room as a whole and kind of where the talent is. And the stuff you're hearing, about Ashton Hampton, Corey Gibson, Tavoy Fegan was, being an early enrollee, he came in really ready to go, while Gibson was recovering from a torn ACL. The long term, prospects for this group is really exciting. So I think that I want to put that out there. But obviously, you don't have a chance to kind of break in these, these young guys. And not to bring it back to Georgia, but that's just the reality. And really just the front part of your schedule. You have such a front loaded schedule. So yeah, your depth is going to be tested, and that's something to watch. The last time we had young corners thrown into the fire, Wake Forest put up 48 points in double overtime. That was not a fun experience. I don't know if Georgia's receivers are A.T. Perry and Donovan Green, but they have some talent at receiver now, and they have Carson Beck, who I think is one of the top quarterback prospects in the draft, throwing the ball. You're not going to have a chance to really kind of break them in. They're going to get thrown to the fire. They're going to be facing some really, really talented pass catchers. So, I do think that's something to monitor. Especially if Lewis and Lucas can't go. I suspect Lucas will be good for Georgia, but Dabo, he's never going to tip his hand. But we've all listened to him for a long time now. You can kind of pick up when he's less optimistic about certain things than others, and he didn't sound as hopeful about Shelton potentially being ready to go for that game. We'll see. But with these lower body injuries, they always seem to linger. But Brian, what do you think?
I mean, Tavoy Fagan was the Khalil Barnes of the 2023 spring game. I said that really poorly, guys. I should just stop.
I get what you're saying.
In 2023, Khalil Barnes put on a clinic in the spring game. And a lot of people says that the spring game, spring practice, this, is glorified. Means absolutely nothing. Well, I hate to tell you, you're wrong, because it predicted a lot of the coming season. It also did in 2022 as well. The good thing for us, if that works out again this year, is that Tavoy Fagan put on a clinic this year. And it reminded me a lot of Khalil Barnes. Of course, Gibson is highly touted coming in. I would say that obviously, they're going to get picked on if you have to put them in the game. But I believe that they'll actually go up there and play hard. And when you have a field general like Mickens in the back, you can trust him to help them, coach them, get in their head, talk them up. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like Barrett Carter's going to do to Sammy Brown. He's going to, even though Sammy Brown is this highest rated linebacker we've ever signed, he's going to get into his head. He's going to be like, hey, dude, I'm glad you're great and stuff, you and your hair, but I'm running things. And Mickens is going to do that same thing in the back. And so we just have to be ready to go. But I really feel good about Fagan. I look forward to see Gibson playing. But, a lot of people talks about, like you said, we have to go back to the Georgia game. Folks, you know why we go back to the Georgia game? It's the first flipping game, and it's the number one team in the country. It's a team that last year was 3 points away from their 30th consecutive win and another trip to the college football playoff. So it's not like we're over here secretly wearing G's on our underwear. It's because this is the first game, and Lord knows I would rather start off with Stanford, and play against a team that's really good at a spelling bee. But we're not. And we're having to start off with the top team in the country, at least so far. And I think it'll be a good test for him. And again, I trust Mike Reed to have them ready. So, I mean, Mike Reed has proven himself over and over again. So I think between he and Wes Goodwin, they'll have these guys ready. Obviously, if I'm Georgia, I go after them, but I believe that they'll have a package set up for that. But hopefully, we can see Shelton Lewis get back in there. We can see Jaden Lucas get in there and not be at 70%. They can't play 70%. I'd rather start the freshman.
Yeah.
Than a 70%.
Jimmy Gibson. If
throw them in there.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think you guys make a lot of good points about our defensive back position, and I couldn't agree with you more, Brian. Mike Reed gets the benefit of the doubt, every day of the week and twice on Sunday with me. That dude is proven time and time again that he can identify talent, and then he coaches them up and they produce on the field in a big way. Just go look at NFL rosters.
I mean, he's so good that he's turned down Georgia multiple times. Kirby. Multiple times. So even including this past offseason. So it's like, I'm with you guys. Mike Reed gets the benefit of the doubt, but it is certainly an interesting position. With because Lucas and Lewis are kind of the primary guys competing for that second cornerback spot. And not to mention, Miles Oliver. He's a guy that hasn't played much, but obviously he's out for the year, so that hurts your depth a little bit. So but we'll see kind of how that, sort of coalesces. But, that's kind of my, we kind of hit on it. That was kind of my biggest question for the defense in the short term, as far as heading into the season. We could talk about defensive end, but I think corner is definitely the most interesting one, just at least from a health standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brian, I'm going to kick it to you really quick because everybody in the chat right now, they want to hear from Brian. They don't want to hear from Jordan and me over here. So I'm going to kick it to you. What is a big question that we haven't talked about so far that you have for our Tigers heading into the 2024 season? What do you got for us?
I have 60 thoughts in one mouth.
Mr. Not an Insider, Mr. Pessimistic himself. What you got?
Yes, pessimistically optimistic, not a journalist.
Yeah.
Just want to let y'all know I'm not a journalist. I don't claim to be. For all you know, from waist down, I'm not wearing any pants right now. You have no clue.
Right.
No, I mean,
our female audience just went up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, they ran away. It's like, what? No, listen, I mean, I tell you this, I'm going to go a little more optimistic for you. Everybody, you're not having a heart attack. You're not having a stroke. I actually said that. I tell you someone I'd like to see have some redemption who has caught so much unneeded criticism, who has been put into an impossible situation. Trevor and Deshaun never dealt with this consistently, never dealt with this type of criticism, and it's Cade Klubnik. I mean, I don't know how many people has come out of the woodwork and filled a tube sock with soap, bars of soap, and started swinging away at that kid. But for the very moment you mentioned that Coach Sweeney, who I have a lot of respect for and rightfully so, he's the guy who went out and hired a bunch of former players. And they are the ones who didn't develop certain players.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those will be the very same people who will fill the tube socks full of bars of soap and go after a 20-year-old kid who played 6A Texas football, never lost a game, won 3 state championships, 2 of them as a starter, and then have the gall to say that he got lucky and he's overrated. I don't know what planet you live on, but we need to tell NASA someone finally made it to Mars because you're not on Earth. I want to see Cade Klubnik have at least one. And in fact, I was talking to one of my subscribers, longtime friends, Chase Henderson, before I was on this. He asked me, what are you thinking? I said, I'll tell you this. I want Cade Klubnik to literally have 1 second longer than what he did in the pocket. That's all I'm asking for. Literally, folks, 1 Mississippi. That's all I want. Why? Because this young man has been put into an impossible situation with an offensive line that's questionable due to development, health, go ahead and make up whatever other reason. We really don't know about the wide receiver situation because, good grief, they can't even finish a route good before he's having to run for his life. And then he's picked up some poor habits. Why? Because he's got to make something happen. So I would love to see Cade Klubnik for himself actually get some redemption here. I would like to see him have a second longer to throw the football. I would like to see him take advantage of that. I would like to see him given some plays, even if Riley says, listen, we're going to throw an extra guy back there to block for you. We're going to get you to throw it long just to keep the safeties honest. Just throw it out of bounds if there's nobody there. But we're going to keep them honest. I would like to see that to where this guy actually gets to do something without trying to be Superman without all the tools around him or the development around him. So that's what I would really like to see. I think the offensive line is going to slowly get better. Matt Luke is probably the best coach, one of the best coaches on staff, period.
Oh, yeah.
But you still have to retrain those players, their reaction time, because when you get to this level of football, you're reacting. And if you stop and you think, you just ended up in the injury tent, sir. So Matt Luke, we need to temper our expectations for him, not because he's not that great. It's because he's having to train these guys. He's having to retrain them. He's having to retrain their reaction, their technique, the way they approach everything. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing TJ Moore and Wesco, but I'm not putting the weight of the Clemson offense improvement on their shoulders. I think that's silly. I think that's irresponsible. The best thing, again, give my boy one more second back there in the pocket, get creative with the play calling, and lean on Maffa. You can win 9 games. Against 9 of the 12 games that we play, you can win 9 games with Maffa alone. Really. Go look at our schedule. You can do it. And he can punish them. So the point is, I just need you to show up for 3 games in my book. And if you can keep Georgia, like you said, well said, make it look like we deserve to be there, and then go in and take care of NC State and say, hey, you got a packed, offense, but even by some of your own fans' admission, former players saying, you got some good players here and there on the NC State defense, but you're not that. But that's their Achilles heel. And then Florida State, a lot of talent. Norvell can coach, but we know their quarterback, and it's just we know how to get to him. So for me, this season is manageable. But again, it goes back to our initial statements. Just show me.
Absolutely. And, on the Cade front, because you really just, you nailed it. And just kind of it's so important, with this offense that, you said, you can win a lot of games leaning on Maffa. And we shouldn't expect, these 2 true freshman wide receivers to come in and bolster the responsibility of improving this offense. And, I don't think you have to. I think this offense boils down to, outside of Cade, I think it boils down to these 3 players. I think Phil Maffa, Antonio Williams, and Jake Brenningstool. I think if these three players are involved in your game plan every week, you should be able to win the majority of the games on the schedule. Maybe you don't. Georgia, sure, long shot. Florida State is tough. Just playing there is tough in general. But the rest of that schedule is very, very, very manageable, as you said. And I think if this offense features those 3 players outside of Cade, you should be able to win a lot of football games. And of course, staying healthy, because, obviously Antonio Williams had he only played in 5 games essentially last year. So, I don't know if you guys agree with me, but correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like those 3 players are the core of your offense, and that's where the offense needs to go, be built around. And of course, your offensive line needs to improve. So, I don't know. Y'all let me know.
I don't know if Tiger Paul Craven's done coughing, but I can give you a thought there.
Yeah, go ahead.
My nose won't stop itching, so it's like a bad Saturday Night Live skit over here. It's like, what's going on with him? To me, run first. Let's start with the run. With the run. Let's not be so predictable, but run first. And to me, I've looked at our schedule, 9, maybe 10, counting NC State. You can run the football heavy and win the majority of those games. When you get to Georgia, don't do like we did. And I know it's a different offensive coordinator and blah, 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 but don't do what we've done in the past where we stop the run by stop running the football, right? That's dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, there's high school coach. I live not too far from a high school. There's high school coaches who knows not to do that. It's like, let's not, if it's working, don't stop it. Run the football, but we have some speedsters, and now we have some guys with speed with length. And that's the new guys. Use them. And you know what? It's so sad. We have a really good tight end room. We really have a good tight end room, and they're just so overshadowed because of the talk of the offensive line and will the wide receivers get open? Hey, can they stay healthy? Cade and blah, 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 blah. But our tight ends, I really feel sorry for them a lot of times because even I'm guilty of just overlooking them. It's like, yeah, it's Brendan Steele and Pat Henry and Sout and all that and Bettenker, whatever his name is, that we just recruited in. But we never talk about them. Those guys are really, really good, and we need to utilize them.
Absolutely. As talented as a room, I think, as Clemson has had in a while. I can't remember. And, that kind of goes back to, we don't really talk about Kyle Richardson a ton because he was kind of a relative unknown, just being he was the coach over at Northwestern High School. But what he's done as a recruiter, especially, has kind of just flown under the radar. And I think if you start to see the development with the younger guys, especially, I mean, you think what you have in Brenningstool, but seeing the development of Sapp and Olsen Pat Henry, you still have Marcus Dixon and obviously Christian Bentaker coming in. Like, you have a really, really good core of tight ends for the near future and beyond. So I'm excited about that and hope that's a bigger feature of the offense and we can get those guys involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think I'm done coughing at this point, at least for the time being. So I'll try to keep it together. But anyways, I think, Jordan, you made a lot of good points, and I think the offensive coaching staff would be wise to focus the offense on the individuals that you talked about. And Antonio Williams, I've talked about it at length on this channel about how excited I am about Antonio Williams heading into the 2024 season. I think he's about to have an unbelievable season. I really do. I truly believe that. I think he will be wide receiver number one come season's end. I believe in Antonio Williams that much. And some of the stuff that I've heard this offseason about him and how focused and how locked in he has been from a preparation of his body to how he's approaching the game on the field is very encouraging. And you guys mentioned the tight end position. Look, Clemson cannot go another season underutilizing the tight end position. That might be the best room on our entire team. And that's saying a lot because we've got some good position groups on this team. But that tight end group, top to bottom, is absolutely insane. And we just added Christian Bentaker. I mean, the dude's out of this world. He's probably going to end up being quite possibly the best tight end we've ever signed at Clemson. And he's a true freshman. But he looks like he can play in the NFL today. That's where he's at from a physical standpoint, right? And then you got a Jake Brenningstool. We have to utilize Jake Brenningstool and make defenses pay for not being able to cover a guy of that size with that athleticism.
I think about that Miami game. I would have been, if I was Jake Brenningstool. I know he's flirted with the portal, especially this offseason. Man, that game would have had me livid. The performance that he had. He had like 6 catches for like 150 yards and like 2 touchdowns. Like the best tight end performance that Clemson's like ever had. Like and you lose that game because of the things we've already talked about. So and
Phil Maffa. I mean, he's a workhorse. Go back and if you can't remember, go back and just watch the Notre Dame game and think about the narrative of Clemson heading into that game. We were in a bad place, and I don't even remember what our predictions were heading into that week, Jordan. But if I did pick Clemson to beat Notre Dame, it wasn't a confident pick.
I know I didn't. I know I picked a loss.
I don't think we picked a loss. I think we both picked a loss that week.
All 3 of us did, yeah.
There were no reasons to think that Clemson was going to go in there and beat Notre Dame. And then we completely flipped the script and out-physicaled a team and showed that we had the ability to do it. And that starts with a guy in Phil Maffa, and you have to use him early and often and allow him to take pressure off of a guy like Cade Klubnik. You can't have Cade Klubnik go out there and play hero ball. You can't. It's going to end in disaster. Don't do it. Let Cade Klubnik play within the confines of the Garrett Riley offense, make the proper reads, throw the ball away when it needs to be thrown away, use his athleticism and his legs when he needs to, and then turn around and hand the ball off to Phil Maffa. Because guess what? 4 quarters of tackling Phil Maffa, defenses don't want to see it. Yeah. They don't want to see it. Oh, and by the way, you got Keith Adams Jr. sitting there waiting on the sideline to give him a breather. And that dude ain't no easier to tackle either. And then you got a guy, oh, by the way, you got Jay Haynes over there. They can actually absolutely run you off the field with his speed and athleticism, especially gets out in space. So I think definitely leaning on that run game. and I'll throw this to both of you guys. How much improvement do you guys legitimately think Matt Luke will get out of the offensive line this season?
I'm gonna let Brian take that one first.
Putting me on the spot here.
Yeah.
I was completing another flowers.com order. No, I think he inherited a mess. And I think when you have guys who has experienced a lot of injury, a lot of inconsistency, a lack of continuity due to all the aforementioned stuff, I think that we need to temper. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm approaching Clemson now. Like, all talking points, all stirring the pot points aside, I'm approaching Clemson with very tempered expectations. I don't think they're going to go 6-6 or anything like that. But I'm approaching it like the show me, just show me. I think you're going to see definitely improvement. If this unit can stay healthy, if they can stay healthy, get past the Georgia game, hopefully with a good showing, I think that by the end of this season, you could see something really special. You could see a more dominant running attack because, I mean, think about it. Maffa has to create his own running lanes a lot. So thank God we have him.
Yeah.
But I do think that barring injury, you will, as the season progresses, I think you're going to see some really good improvements. But right off the bat, I'm just having to back myself off because I want to be overly zealous because Matt Luke is there. I was so shocked that they went after him, and we need more of those guys on the offensive side of the football. And by the way, that proves that Clemson can get those types of coaches still, and we should. But even with him being a brilliant expert, probably even Georgia fans, you know how mouthy a lot of Georgia fans are. Like, they'll be like, yeah, I think Clemson is trash, but Matt Luke is unbelievable. Y'all got a good one. So I'm having to temper my expectations. They will be improved, but I'm just trying to chill out at the beginning of the season because I think they're going to have some growing pains.
I'm with you, man. And it's going to be I think the good thing is, I think from a physical body type standpoint, at least with your starting five and some of the younger guys as well, I think you're in a better spot than you were in years past. I think you have some physical movers. I mean, Blake Miller, in the run game, when he's healthy, I mean, the guy can, he's tough to move. And he moves people, especially in the run game. Walker Parks, when he's healthy, I think Ryan Linthicum with, the battle at center has been interesting. And we could probably spend a whole another hour talking about that and how important that is. But I think he's done the things he needs to do to get his body right. But we'll see. Again, it's show me. But even the younger guys that we don't expect to start, the Colin Sadlers, the Ian Reeds, who unfortunately is out for the year, but I think he can eventually get there. Dietrich Pennington, who maybe we get something out of him at some point. Maybe, Matt Luke is the guy that kind of gets him to turn it around. But you have, it's not an overly deep group. We know that for sure. But I think what you have with this starting five, I think Matt Luke has something to work with. And I think you have enough pieces in some other spots to, for the future. Because, a lot of these guys still have eligibility. Tristan Lay and Marcus Tate. And I think Ryan Linthicum has like 2 years. He feels like he's been here forever, but I think he actually has 2 years left of eligibility. I mean, I think Walker Parks is gone. And Blake Miller, who I've seen on a ton of, mock drafts, we'll see how that goes. I've seen him in the first round in quite a few, but he is talented. So, I think you have some of that. And thank you, Adam, for mentioning Elijah Thurman. He completely skipped my mind, but he's a guy that they've been raving about all off season. So, I mean, you have some good young pieces to build around. And as Matt Luke kind of builds his rapport and gets his foothold, especially from a recruiting standpoint, I think, the future we'll see the future of this room kind of shape out a little bit more optimistic than maybe we felt in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense, and we're coming up on our hour here, so I want to be respectful of your time, Brian. And we got a few more things to get to. If you could hang on with us for a
I
couple
can.
more
Yeah.
minutes, but we're going to go ahead and turn the page from the questions. And since we've all kind of inadvertently over the past hour or so, we've kind of laid out our thoughts on Clemson heading into the 2024 season and where we think they stand from both an offensive and defensive standpoint, some of the weak points and some of the strengths that we have heading into the season, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Clemson over under win total. We're not going to do a game by game prediction where we predict wins and losses from week to week. But Clemson's over under win total, according to most of the sports betting books, is 8.5. That's the over under win total. Pretty low for a Clemson Tiger team. So you guys, I'm going to throw it to you two. You guys can say you'd bet your money on the over, you'd bet your money on the under, and you can give your thoughts about a few games if you guys wish. But I'll go ahead and throw it to you guys. Over under win total 8.5. How do you guys feel about that as of right now, Friday, August 16th, heading into the 2024 season?
I think it's a comfortable over for me. I think this is a 9-win football team. I really do. And I'm not saying I'm predicting them to win only 9 games, but I think this team absolutely can win 9 games. I think reasonable improvement should be expected from Cade Klubnik, just being a second-year guy in the system. I do think you're in a better spot from a skill position standpoint than you've been in quite some time. I think there's a lot of reasons to think that, Cade, and as a second-year starter, third year in the program, takes that next step. And I believe enough in what you have defensively that you can expect some consistency from week to week, even if, maybe there's you were a top, 5 to 10 defense last year. Maybe if you're a top 15 defense, but the offense or top 20 defense and the offense, takes a significant step forward, you're not almost dead last in explosive plays. You're not, extremely inefficient in the passing game. And Cade is not throwing the ball more than any other quarterback in the ACC. Yeah, I think you can win 9 games easily. So comfortable over for me. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, first off, if Cade Klubnik gets hurt, I take the under.
Yeah.
As of
we
today,
have to assume health there for sure.
As of today, he's healthy. I take the over. Here's why. For the first 5 games, Georgia, App State, you're off. NC State, you play the Nerds of Stanford, and then you're at Florida State. Okay, after that, Wake, Virginia, you're off. Louisville, VT, Pittsburgh, the Citadel, and the Chickens. Okay, we're top heavy with this schedule.
Oh, yeah.
And literally, what's kind of funny is if you rank the playability legitimately, the top 3 teams that we're going to play throughout the season, the toughest 3 teams, we play them in the first 5 weeks. Georgia being the top one, NC State I would rank 3rd, of course, Florida State 2nd, but we play them in the first 5 weeks. If Clemson comes out the first 5 games and they've only lost 1 ball game, you can go ahead and knock that on up to 10 wins ACC appearance, obviously. But I agree with you 100%. 9 wins. 9 wins is extremely doable. 8.5, yeah, I definitely take the over.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I agree with you guys. I'm definitely leaning towards the over. I think this team is at least a 9-win team. I think if they don't get to 9 wins, it's a very disappointing season, and something has gone wrong. I think this team should absolutely expect to win 9 games this season at a minimum. And it is a very front-loaded schedule. But if you get out of those first 5 games and you have no more than 1 loss, I think you're set up, like you say, Brian. I think you're set up for probably an ACC appearance, possibly another ACC championship, and off to the playoffs once again, which would be a season for Clemson that kind of changes the tide, right, and starts trending the program back in a direction where us as Clemson fans want to see it go. So
I throw this question out there. Do you definitely take the under if Cade Klubnik gets injured?
For now, I don't want to say 100%. I'm not on the 100% because I can't completely discount the world where Christopher Vizina has made that second year jump. I have no reason to think that other than what's been said, but we haven't seen anything from him to go ahead and say that. But people in the chat talking about Trent Pierman. I mean, he's not who's going to be running out there if Cade gets hurt. So I mean, that's just the reality of it. So we have to operate under the assumption that Christopher Vizina is the guy that comes in. I would lean towards the under right now just because we haven't seen it, but there is a world because I do think Chris Vizina is not an untalented. I mean, he was a top 100 kid out of the state of Alabama. Like a lot of SEC schools wanted him. But again, what we've seen from him in limited time, from last year and in the spring game, hasn't given you a lot to be confident about. That's just the reality. But we're not there in practice every day, and so who knows? Maybe he has made that jump, and Dabo has been complimentary of him this fall. So, but for now, because we don't have any sample size, any positive, really sample size to go with, I would say under if Cade Klubnik gets hurt, and that would be very unfortunate.
Very, very unfortunate if that were to happen. But I think, I think we all took the over, assuming that Clemson stays healthy. Now that's a big assumption. If you look at Clemson's track record over the past 3 seasons, health has not been on our side for those 3 seasons, and that is just one of many issues that the program has run into over the past 3 seasons. So I think all of us kind of sit at the same point where we are cautiously optimistic about the offense, and we are pretty confident that the defense will end up being a really good unit in 2024. Am I correct by saying that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, at least for me, I don't want to speak for Brian, but that's how I feel.
I believe in history, and until the pattern that relative history has given you, I think that it would be unwise to go against it. So our defensive coaches and our players has proven themselves worthy. Every time they were put into a position, they have proven themselves worthy of their role, worthy of their scholarship, and I think it would be wrong to discount them. On the other hand, we have a lot of questions. We now have 3 seasons of this, and we can talk about different OC. We can talk about this and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we've had problems on the offense, and then you talked about injury just a second ago. I mean, good grief, I think they now have a special Clemson wing at Oconee Memorial, so we got to figure that out too. But I think that just using recent relevant history, we can try. I believe I have good solid hopes for our defense, and I'm just hoping that the offense can pull things together, and we have a kicker.
Yeah.
The kicking game's a whole other mess that we didn't get the opportunity to dive deep into tonight, but we are right up against the hour. And Brian, I want to be respectful of your time. So if you need to go ahead and sign off, you can absolutely do that. We got a couple more segments to get into tonight. And then obviously, if you've ever watched our show before, we kind of turn it over to the comment section at the end. So I just want to thank you so much for being here tonight. And I don't want to hold you any longer if you need to go.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hop off. Guys, thanks for having me on. You two are just fantastic, and you've always been a friend of mine and a supporter of mine, and I'm glad you guys are doing as well as you are. I mean, you're just killing it. And, hey, we have football in 2 weeks. We'll have more to talk about, but it's always a pleasure to talk to y'all, and I got to have y'all on my show. So y'all take care of yourself. Y'all be good, and everybody do drop by, but please let me know that you saw me on this channel, because these guys, they're good people. So I'm going to hop off, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. Y'all take care and have a happy weekend.
Thank you,
Absolutely, Brian. Thank you so much for hopping on the show, and we will be on your show shortly. You know how to get a hold of us, and we'll work it out. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Take care, y'all.
Later. Brian Knight, everybody.
Brian Knight, the man, the myth, the legend. We finally got Brian on the show, Jordan. I think it was a great hour of conversation between the three of us. Couldn't be more excited about finally getting that to happen. And hopefully everybody in the comment section enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've been kind of teasing this one for a little while now. So, and I'm just, it was a blast. Anytime we get a chance to chop it up with him, it's been fun, whether it's been here or on his show. And I'm glad our schedules finally lined up. So, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, what a great segment. We'll cut that up and put that in a video as well. But we got 50 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for showing up. I hope you guys will consider to stick around. Me and Jordan do this show. It's called The All In Show every Friday at 5:30 p.m. We chop it up about Clemson football, college football, everything in between. We also do a post-game live video immediately following every Clemson game for the duration of the season. So I hope you guys will check that out. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring all your college football folks in here. Tell them to join us. Tell them to subscribe. Make sure you guys hit that like button while you're in here as well. It really helps us out on the live videos. But we got a couple more segments to get into, Jordan. A couple more things to talk about. We've kind of talked about Clemson football so far and where we think they are and things like that. But there was an interesting story that came out this week. And a former player of Clemson had some comments. He went on a podcast and was talking about him transferring from Clemson. So everybody knows Andrew Mukuba, kind of a 3-year starter for Clemson. Everybody knows his freshman season he kind of burst onto the scene similar to Khalil Barnes, right? Had a killer season at the safety position. His second year was a little bit trying. He got moved more towards the cornerback position just due to injuries and due to the style of defense we were playing that season. And he struggled a lot, right, in year 2. Year 3 comes around. He has a really good offseason, back to the safety position, back to the position where he's a little bit more of a natural fit, a little bit more comfortable, and put up a pretty decent season last year. But eventually, obviously, as the offseason went on, he decided to move on from the Tigers. He entered the transfer portal, ended up committing to Texas. And I just want to read a couple quotes for you, Jordan, and for the people that may have not seen the interview to give some context on what he said. And then we'll kind of give our thoughts on what Andrew Mukuba said and what it means or what it doesn't mean for the Clemson football program, okay? So he said, "My time at Clemson, I felt like I wasn't really getting better," Mukuba said this week. "I wasn't being pushed enough to where I could reach my potential at my peak. The program wasn't where it needed to be for me and the whole team to be successful. After my junior year, I felt it was the same thing. After that, it was only right for me to transfer. No coach wants to hear one of their players is going to leave, but I felt it was a conversation that needed to be had," Mukuba said. "This was my future and something that was going to affect me. I don't think they were seeing it from my perspective. It was time to make a decision for myself, and I know it was right for me. They supported me, and there's no bad blood." So that's a couple quotes. Obviously, you guys can go watch the whole interview. I think it was on a podcast called Behind the Face Mask. Andrew Mukuba was interviewed and kind of asked his reasoning for leaving the Tigers. So, Jordan, I'm sure you've seen the parts of the interview at least, and read some articles on various writers reporting on what he had to say about the Tigers. What were your thoughts on kind of his comments? Did they surprise you at all? And what do you think it means for the Tigers and Andrew Mukuba?
Yeah, no, the comments themselves, no, like the content within them didn't surprise me. I mean, a lot of it was stuff that I had kind of known. And if you've had a close ear and eye on the program, that's kind of been something that's been bubbling up for a little bit now. I don't, a lot of Clemson fans were really reactionary, online when they saw those comments. I'm not one to speak on a player's experience. Their experience is their experience. And so, I don't want to tell him that, he's wrong or invalidate that or anything. I think, the reality is Andrew Mukuba was considering transferring for a very long time. It was not a spur of the moment decision. He was very, very close to transferring after his sophomore year. He listed some of the things about not feeling like he was pushed by the coaching staff, but he also had some things in his personal life. He's a lot of people don't realize he's a father. He has a kid back in Texas. There are a lot of things. There's a lot of family dynamics that were calling him to come back and be closer to home. Especially being he's from he was born in Zimbabwe, and his family immigrated over to the United States. So, and they're a very, very close, tight knit people, and he wanted him going to Clemson was kind of it kind of went against that in a lot of ways. So there was a lot of things, from the moment he committed to Clemson, pulling him back. And so, I don't think he really got to tell the whole story, and I'm not, defending everything he said, but I just want to, put that out there before I say what I'm about to say. I think a lot of that he probably could have. A lot of what he said probably could have been, left off the table, at least, the criticism of the coaches and stuff. But, and I think the reality is I don't necessarily think it was so much that he wasn't pushed. I think a lot of it was just on, bad luck on his part and bad luck on Clemson's part. And, he comes in as a freshman. He's freshman All-American, has a phenomenal season in Brent Venables last year as defensive coordinator. And then that changed. And, that was a big shock, because, that was a big shock. And that was another, that was one thing pulling him potentially to the portal already. And then, Wes Goodwin comes on, takes over the defense. And, Wes does not run Brent Venables' scheme. I think people don't realize. People think that it's, oh, man, Wes studied under Brent, so, we're running the same defense. But no, stylistically, they're, formationally, they do a lot of similar stuff. But Wes is much more, he plays more man than Brent did. He plays a lot of more man free. He puts, especially in that 2022 season, he put a lot of stress on his corners. And with the injuries that had happened and piled up in Andrew's sophomore year and him moving in the corner, I think that certainly stunted his development. But I think that was just something that neither him or Clemson could control. They needed somebody to play out there. And you can't play, Jalen Phillips or RJ Mickens at corner. Like they're not corners. And Andrew Mukuba from a size standpoint, and it kind of made it more difficult to project him long-term at safety. And so you needed somebody to fill in, on the outside at corner, and, he struggled, and that was the reality. And because he dealt with injuries that season, that didn't help as well. And so I think that was probably the turning point. And I felt like, he was he was dead set on transferring after that season, and they were able to convince him to stick it out and come back another year. They moved him to nickel. He had a solid season last year. I mean, he had some lapses, but overall he was a pretty solid. He had a solid year, but Khalil Barnes comes in and bursts onto the scene. So I say all that to say that I don't think it was so much that Clemson wasn't pushing him or didn't try their best to get him ready. And I don't want to say that Andrew didn't try his best to get better, but I think that the reality is football is it's a lot more random than I think, we're sometimes willing to admit. We like to think that, oh man, if you just work hard, you're going to get better, but things happen, injuries happen. Guys get moved to different positions. So that changes how you do, that changes how you develop. Sometimes a guy comes in and is flat out better than you. That happens too. So like I think that, you know, Andrew was kind of a victim of circumstance, not really a victim of, you know, Clemson, especially when you consider that Clemson had a top 5 pass defense last year. Like
Right.
it was a very good pass defense. So like if there was a development issue on that side of the ball, like if Andrew said that and Clemson was giving up, you know, 30 points a game and getting, you know, beat over the top, like, okay, yeah, we can have a conversation. But like, you know,
Yeah.
everybody else got better from 2022, like significantly better. Like the pass defense went from really like abysmal by Clemson standards to one of the best in the country. I mean, I think that speaks to the development. So I don't want to, you know, say that Andrew is wrong and because, you know, every player is different and they all have a different experience. But yeah, I mean, I don't have the, you know, the reaction that a lot of, you know, fans did when they heard that. But that's also because I just am more understanding of his situation specifically because of some of the personal things that were also pulling him to go back to Texas. A lot of people were saying like, oh, he just took the money, like it was a money thing. I mean, and I don't want to say that, you know, money wasn't involved. He's being taken care of at Texas, but that's also his home. That's where he's not. That's all he's known, and he has a kid. So you know, they're in his family is really close. Like there's a lot that went into that decision. So I wanted to put that out there. It was interesting to hear those comments, and some of it, you know, I understand why it rubbed people the wrong way. But I do think it was more of he was a victim of circumstance and not really a victim of, you know, something that Clemson, you know, a shortcoming on Clemson's part.
Yeah. And look, this is nothing new. Players and coaches don't see eye to eye all the time, right? This isn't anything new. We are just in a stage of, you know, social media and players being very comfortable going on various podcasts and things like that. And you hear a lot of things that, you know, in the past before social media got big and, you know, you had YouTube and you had all these podcasts, you had all these people doing their own thing on social media as far as covering sports and things. You hear a lot more things now that you wouldn't have heard in the past, right? This is nothing new under the sun, right? And Andrew Mukuba obviously felt a certain type of way about his development at Clemson and, you know, how the coaches were handling him, and he's entitled to that opinion. And I understand from Clemson fan standpoint, just like you pointed out, you know, them feeling a certain type of way about the comments that he made. And I think one of the things that kind of stand out to me is I would put more validity into his comments about being underdeveloped if he wasn't talking about guys like Mike Reed and Mickey Kahn. Those two guys are very proven as far as Clemson coaches go, assistant coaches go, and the quality of player that they trot out on the field in the defensive backfield for Clemson. They have a long track record of identifying and producing very talented individuals when it comes to the Clemson secondary. Not that Clemson's perfect, not that those coaches don't make mistakes, and not that, you know, there wasn't something there. But when you look at the track record of those two coaches, you tend to lean to, you know, maybe it was just a difference in personalities. Maybe it was, you know, maybe he just needed to change the scenery. You mentioned a lot of the personal things that Andrew Mukuba had going on. You know, he does have a child. His family is in Texas. And, you know, maybe things weren't going his way. And, you know, young players were coming in. And you mentioned the splash of Khalil Barnes and splashing onto the scene. And he's that kind of nickel guy for Clemson now. And, you know, maybe that influenced a lot of the decision as well, having a young guy like that come in and really push you. So there could be a ton of things that go into this. And I don't think any party on either side needs to overreact to it. It is what it is. He's entitled to his opinion. And if he feels that he was underdeveloped at Clemson, then good for him for hopping in the transfer portal and doing doing what he thinks is right for his career, right? I don't think Clemson fans need to hate on him or have any ill will towards him. Like he mentioned in his comments, he made some pretty blunt comments about Clemson. Some of them, didn't sit well with a lot of Clemson fans, and that's okay. But at the end of it, he said there's no bad blood, right? He still has a relationship with these Clemson coaches. They supported him in his decision. They helped him get to where he wanted to go, which ultimately ended up being Texas. And I think all parties can move on. He obviously felt that he was underdeveloped. So I think he made a good decision to move on and go to a different program if he felt that was the case at Clemson. You shouldn't stay somewhere where you feel like you're not growing. Whatever the reason being why you're not growing, whether it's partly on him, partly on the coaches, a mix between the two, you should move on. And I think he made the right decision. And I'm not saying we're better without Andrew Mukuba. He was a really good player for Clemson, and we would have loved to have him again this season. And he would be an asset to this defense right now. So I'm not going to be a fan that says, we're better off without Andrew Mukuba. No, he's a really good player. And he made a lot of good plays for Clemson. But sometimes it's better for both parties to move on, especially if those are the feelings behind the scenes. So I wish him well. I think he's going to have a great season at Texas. At least I hope he does. I hope he stays healthy. And I hope he moves on to the NFL and makes a lot of money and is able to take care of his family. And that's just kind of where I sit with it. I don't take really any offense to what he says. I take some of what he says with a grain of salt. And I look to the track record that those two coaches have and the quality that Clemson has produced at those positions. And I'll trust the coaching staff and trust that they know what they're doing because they've proven to get the benefit of the doubt time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially since, and you talked about it. I mean, I say that, and I agree. And what you said, that you shouldn't stay somewhere if you feel like you're being underdeveloped. Like go somewhere else. And that's well within your right. Whether you're right or wrong. I mean, that's not up for me to decide. I'm not in there every day. I'm not with you. I don't know what the coaches are telling you. I don't know what they're having you do. So I can't say whether you're right or wrong. And so you should go and do that. And we know that, the plan for Andrew was always he wanted to be a 3-and-done type of player. Now, obviously, that didn't work out for a lot of those reasons that we talked about. And so, he went somewhere where he was closer to home and felt like he was going to be developed. Now, whether that was the right decision, especially when you consider how poor Texas's pass defense was last year, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he comes in and all of a sudden they're an elite, pass defense or that. Who knows? I think Jay made a great point. He did put a microscope on himself as far as what his future development and kind of what his season is like this year. Because I don't think from what I've read, he hasn't locked down the starting spot. I think he's in a battle right now. So that could be something to keep an eye on. That's one of the risks you run when you kind of talk about, a former place, whether it's good. DJ did the same thing, not the exact same thing, but he did have some criticisms of Clemson and kind of his time there. Obviously, it was still no bad blood, but he felt like they weren't doing what he wanted to do and what would help him get better. So he went somewhere else. And so, that's going to put a microscope on you, good or bad, about, it's like if you go somewhere else and you look like the same player, then, was it really the school you were at, or I don't know. So that's something to monitor. I hope he's successful because I think he is. I mean, he's a good dude. I don't think he's a bad kid or anything like that. He comes from a really good family. Never heard any like disciplinary, issues with him while he was here. So I hope he is. I hope he is successful.
Yeah, 100%. I think we all hope he's successful, and I don't believe anyone should have any ill will towards him whatsoever. And I'm sure no one does at this point. But We got 36 people in the live chat right now. Thanks for showing up, guys. Make sure you hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you like what we do here on the All In Show. Again, we do the show every Friday at 5:30 p.m. Also, keep in mind, guys, we will toss it to the chat here in a couple minutes. We got a couple more things to talk about on the show. Then once we're done with the planned portion of the show, we're going to turn it over to the comment section like we do each and every week. We will answer as many questions as we possibly can. Keep in mind the super chat feature is available if you want to guarantee that your question or comment is read and responded to by me and Jordan on the show. Be sure to hit that super chat feature and support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show, and that would be greatly appreciated. All right, Jordan, let's go ahead and transition into our next topic. And we hit on this a little bit while me, you, and Brian were kind of previewing the Clemson football season and all of the stuff. But I did want to kind of update everybody on what is going on with the injuries at Clemson thus far. Everybody knows fall camp is done as of today. The last scrimmage was yesterday. Dabo Swinney talked to the media. He outlined that we got out of that last scrimmage, the last preseason game, if you will, pretty much unscathed. But he did make mention that we are down 3 people for the season as far as Clemson football goes so far. And that is offensive lineman Watson Young tore his ACL in practice, so he's done for the season.
Or again, I don't know if it's, I don't know, because he was already coming off a torn ACL, but I don't know if it's the same one or not.
I don't know if it's the same one, but I think one of the media members asked if it was a setback, and he reiterated that he tore his ACL in practice. So I think it's another ACL tear. I don't know if it's the same knee or if it's the other knee, but unfortunately, it looks like he tore it either again or he tore the other knee. So speedy recovery for Watson Young. Hopefully, he can grind it out and make it back for spring ball. Another injury in the defensive back, the cornerback position, Miles Oliver. He's out with an ACL tear as well. And then another offensive lineman, Ian Reed, didn't say whether it was an ACL or not, just specified that it was a knee injury and that he's out for the season. I would assume it's some sort of tear and is going to require surgery if he's for sure shut down for the entire season. So a couple injuries along the offensive line already, an injury at the cornerback position, And we already mentioned the kind of depth issue that we're already dealing with at camp as far as Jaden Lucas and Shelton Lewis being day-to-day. Are those guys going to be back for the Georgia game? Are we going to have to rely on, a Tavoy Fegan or a Ashton Hampton or a Corian Gibson, some of those true freshman guys? That remains to be seen. But everybody outside of those 3 that are out for the season are, according to Dabo Swinney, quote unquote, day-to-day. What that means, he specified to the media that means nothing, basically. It could mean 2 days, it could mean 2 weeks, it could mean a month, but day-to-day. So essentially day-to-day gives us no timeline on any of these individuals that are currently day-to-day. But what are your thoughts on kind of where Clemson is from an injury standpoint? Are you happy with kind of where we've been at as far as camp goes? Obviously transitioning into Georgia prep on Sunday.
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I do have some concerns, but I think you're in a better spot than you were last year for sure. And the fact that you went through this most recent scrimmage without anybody getting hurt is a big deal. And you mentioned the guys that are out for the year. I think the biggest loss is Ian Reed. I think he just is a guy that was going to slot in, especially in your tackle depth. He has repped at guard at times throughout the offseason as well. So he was going to be a guy that was kind of on the higher end as far as who to go to if somebody goes down. That's a little concerning because this is not especially at tackle, this is not an overly deep tackle room right now. And so you want to have that, security a little bit more because you don't really want to be relying on you don't really want to be relying on guys that haven't or that are like true freshmen or guys that have hardly seen the field. So that one hurts a good bit, and Miles Oliver being, a depth piece at corner, that certainly is not great because you're already dealing with 2 corners who are already injured. So it kind of guarantees that, it guarantees that, beyond like Brandon Strozier, you're going to be relying on, true freshmen for depth at corner. So not great for sure. And Watson Young being a true freshman, you hate that for his development. He was a late take in this this past recruiting cycle, but a guy that they really like, local kid. That's he wasn't expected to be a contributor obviously this year, but that for his long-term development, you don't want him missing time like this. So speedy recovery to him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your thoughts on the cornerback position? I know we touched on it a little bit, and obviously we don't know if Jaden Lucas or Shelton Lewis are going to be healthy for that Georgia game. But assuming one of those guys are, you still need these depth pieces, right? So even though you have Terrell on the other side, and hopefully you got at least a Jaden Lucas on that side, who do you think is first to run out there to give these guys a breather? Is that a Brandon Strozier? Is that is that I've heard rumors of Ronan Hannafin doing some cross training over there. Those have been rumors.
He's been repping that linebacker. They've given him some time. I mean, he played both sides of the ball in high school. I kind of, and I've had some conversations with Clemson, some of my Clemson buddies, that felt like we should have recruited him at linebacker from the start. Yeah. I can't say I disagree. His linebacker tape was really, really good coming out. Right. I tend to think like seniority, it's not as big of a deal. Like Wes has not been a big seniority guy like Brent Venables was. Like it's like whoever is talented and can play is the most talented is the one that's going to play a lot of the time. But I do think they'll give Brandon Strozier some run, because I think that they've been really complimentary of what he's been able to do this offseason. Yeah. So I would lean towards him being the next in line, just because Ashton Hampton is a summer enrollee, and but again, we've seen summer enrollees on the offensive side of the ball come in and play, but defensively it can be a little bit more. Sometimes the path to playing time is a little bit different, because it does take, especially in Wes's scheme, like that trust you have to develop that trust. Mm-hmm. So as much as great things as we've heard about the true freshman corners, I think Brandon Strozier, at least initially, will be the guy that runs out there. If you can't get, behind Lucas and Lewis, like if neither one of them can go, I think he'd be the guy. That's kind of where I feel right now. But I think, if he comes out and gets toasted, throw Ashton Hampton out there, or Corian Gibson, or Tavoy Figure, we don't have a sample size of a huge sample size of Brandon Strozier either, so it's not like he has like this rapport that he's built up. He's still a young guy himself.
He made some plays in the spring game.
He looked really good in the spring game.
He looked pretty well in the spring game. I've heard some, him having some pretty big pass breakups in as far as fall camp goes. So it sounds like he's getting better. He's taking that next step. He's trending towards a bit of a better player. So like you, I think he'll probably be the first one to run out there. But again, Ashton Hampton's probably physically the guy that's most ready. From a mental standpoint, who knows? But physically, like
it's a true freshman summer enrollee, 6'2", what is he, 6'2", 200 pounds?
Yeah,
that's insane, man.
Just an absolute beast out there. So physically, you would love to see Ashton Hampton get an opportunity as well. But again, you talk about Wes Goodwin's scheme and the trust that it takes in that back end, and is he going to be able to catch up mentally quick enough? Who knows? But unfortunately, we may have to lean on some of these true freshmen at different points in time in the season, especially if we continue to struggle with injury, especially with those top 3 to 4 guys. You think about Avian Terrell. Hopefully he stays healthy. Jaden Lucas and Shelton Lewis, those guys have been banged up. You got Brandon Strozier. Hopefully he stays healthy. But after that, you really are probably looking at a lot of these true freshman guys to step in and maybe have to take meaningful snaps at some point in time this season if we can't get healthy and stay healthy in that cornerback position.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, your depth is going to be tested. Like we said, you're not going to have much time to really get right. You're going to, so I think everybody, I mean, beyond Terrell and, I think Lewis and Lucas they clearly have separated themselves from the rest of the group. But, obviously them dealing with injuries means like that kind of muddies the waters a little bit. But I think you definitely do need to have a very short leash, if you have to rely on some of those younger guys, because you can't afford to have somebody out there and, getting toasted.
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, unfortunately, look at the lineup of quarterbacks you play in the first 5 weeks of the season if you're Clemson. You play a lot of veteran guys.
Yeah, I mean, even App State's quarterback, he had a really nice year last year. I can't think of his name right now.
Isn't he like a third or fourth year guy? I mean, so I mean that's an experienced quarterback. Obviously, Georgia, second year starter coming back. Obviously, they expect him to take the next step, and then you got
Grayson McCall.
You got Grayson McCall. I mean, everybody knows what he is and what kind of baller and playmaker he is at the quarterback position. And then, whatever you think about TJ Uyunglele, I mean, he's
played a lot of ball. Yeah,
a 6-year quarterback at this point. Yeah. So I mean, regardless of what you think of him, he does have a lot of experience. And when you're dealing with very young cornerbacks, they're going to tend to make mistakes, and experienced quarterbacks make young cornerbacks pay typically. So you really hope that Clemson can get healthy and stay healthy in that position group and not have to lean on the young guys so much. But again, thankfully for us, if we do, we have some really talented young guys, and hopefully, they'll get baptized by fire and we'll figure it out. We've been there before, and it's worked out in the past in some senses. So we'll see how it works out this time.
Yeah. But obviously, ideal scenario, you get Lucas and Lewis. Hopefully at least one of them, but ideally both of them ready to go, and then you feel a little bit better about your rotation, and then you can get your younger guys in spots, and not you don't need them to be big time snaps type players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll definitely hope for that, but we'll see how it goes. We shall see how it goes. All right, 40 people in the live chat right now. Make sure you guys are hitting that like button for us. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We got one more segment in the books, and then we are turning it over to the comment section. So don't worry. Hang on with us for a couple more minutes, and we will get to all of your comments and questions here in a few minutes. So, Jordan, let's go ahead and get into the last segment of the show, and it's our favorite segment of all time, BYOG or Sell. I'll let you kick it off, and we'll see what we got tonight.
Yeah, I got a good one, and this one kind of was struck up when we were talking to Brian. Like, we talked about Blake Miller, when talking about the offensive line. BYOG or Sell. Blake Miller has a first-team All-ACC season, at least, maybe All-American, we'll see, and gets drafted in the first round.
Ooh, that's lofty goals right there.
I mentioned it because I've seen him in mock drafts. Like he's getting a lot of love from.
I think he has the potential to make it happen. He's been a really good player from Clemson pretty much since he showed up on campus. Has been a constant contributor for the Tigers, and I think with the addition of Luke and just the energy that I'm feeling from the offensive line this year, I will go buy on that. I think Blake Miller is going to have an exceptional season. I'm not 100% for sure he'll go. I think he'll have an all-ACC type season at the tackle position. I do believe that. The one thing that gives me pause is the first round of the draft. I don't really know if that's going to happen. So I'm kind of back and forth on that. But out of sheer just hoping, not only for Blake Miller would that be great, but it'd be great for Clemson to get a guy in the first round at the offensive line position. So out of just hoping it and putting it out in the world and hopefully it happens, I will go by on Blake Miller being an all ACC selection come season's end.
Well, so I also did include the first round part. But
yeah, the first round. I'm throwing the first round in there,
okay.
Reluctantly throwing the first round in there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go again. I'm gonna sell. But I do think the potential is absolutely there. But last season, he had his moments. I don't think he was completely healthy last year. They didn't really show their hand as far as what the injuries were. But you could tell at times last year that Blake was laboring a little bit more than he was as a freshman. I don't think he was completely healthy.
Right.
I do think he has a bounce back year, but I think it's the getting drafted in the first round thing that gives me pause.
Yeah, that
I've seen it, but I included that because I saw it and I've seen it in mock drafts. He's one of he's like the top 2 or 3 tackles in projected right now in the draft. Like you've got the 2 LSU guys, and then you've got Blake Miller, and I'm like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Because of that, I do want to sell, but I am going to will it into existence, Jordan.
I like it.
I'm going to keep saying it and will it into existence until it happens. At least that's my plan. But we'll see. All right, BYOG or sell. I'm going to go. Let's go game 1 of the college football season, at least for the Tigers, August 31st, 2024. We kick off against the Georgia Bulldogs. Clemson, BYOG or sell. Clemson will keep it within a touchdown or less against the Georgia Bulldogs.
Damn.
BYOG or sell.
I'm gonna sell, but not by much. It's I don't want to give away my score prediction because we will get.
I don't want to get into the specifics of it. Yeah.
I'm going to sell slightly, so I think that should tell people kind of how I'm feeling on this game. I think what the spread is, 14 or 13 and a half, whatever it is. I think Clemson can cover that, and I'm leaning towards them covering that. But within a touchdown, I think you need. I think we're going to have to see some things we just haven't seen. I think that's just the reality. Or either the defense has an incredible performance, and because that could happen too. But I'm leaning towards I'm leaning towards sell, but I think it's very possible. I think this team has a better shot than anybody is giving them credit for right now. But it's still a lofty, keeping it within a score because we just don't have the sample size or the data to say that, okay, the offense is definitely going to show up in this game. So, I'm sell, but slightly for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would sell on that. I'm not there yet. And again, we'll talk more Georgia Clemson next week. Hey, stay tuned this next week. We got a very special guest coming on the show.
Yes, we do.
To preview the Georgia Clemson game. A pretty big Georgia YouTuber. Maybe I'll tell you by the end of the show. I don't know. We'll see. But again, I don't want to give away my score prediction or where I'm leaning as far as the outlook of the game, but I would go ahead and sell on less than a touchdown as of right now. Maybe my mind changes in a week. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I feel next week on the show.
Yes, we will. All right.
All right, let's do one more piece, and then we'll turn it over to the comments section.
Okay. Whew. All right. BYOG or sell? Ooh. Oh man, what was I had one before, but the Blake Miller one was like I got to make sure I say this one so I don't forget it, and then I forgot the one that I had planned. BYOG or sell? Whew. Ashton Hampton is a I don't want to say that. Ashton Hampton gets the most snaps out of any of the freshman defensive backs, BYOG or so.
I'll buy.
Okay.
I'll buy. Out of the freshmen, I'll buy. Just because of the stuff that I kind of talked about before about Ashton Hampton and just where he's at physically. He's just a physical specimen at this point. So I think he has the greatest potential physically to get on the field. And if Mike Reed can get him spun up from the mental side and really understanding his assignments, I think he has. And also because of the injuries and the constant unavailability of Jaden Lucas, unfortunately, over his career, and Shelton Lewis being banged up for a lot of fall camp. I think Ashton Hampton definitely has a potential to get some good snaps this season, and hopefully he can handle the workload.
Oh, and I just thought about how I phrased the question. I would, when I said freshman defensive backs, I was thinking just the freshman corners. But how would you, this is kind of cheating or kind of doing a double BYOG or so, but how would you feel if I included the freshman safeties in that conversation? Noah Dixon, Ricardo Jones, like, would that change? Do you still feel like Ashton Hampton would be the one that gets the most snaps?
I still feel slightly that Ashton Hampton would get more snaps just because the depth at that safety position. I just don't know how many opportunities, although, we've heard great things about the freshmen and how they flashed at times in fall camp. I just don't know how much opportunity they're going to get because of all the depth and the really veteran guys that are in that safety room.
I think I'm with you. Yep. BYOG.
All right. We did our kind of over-under prediction. We didn't do a game-by-game prediction. So I'm going to throw you kind of a record BYOG or sell for the last one. And I'm going to go the first 5 weeks of the season. Okay. So I'll remind you Clemson's schedule for the first 5 weeks of the season. Georgia, week 1, at home against App State, at home against North Carolina State, at home against Samford, and then at Florida State. Okay, so that's your first 5 weeks of the season for Clemson. BYOG or sell, Clemson will have 1 or less losses come week 6 of the college football season.
Man, I'm gonna say BYOG. I think I think you split Georgia and Florida State, whichever one that might be. I think if you do that, ideally, I think that's where you'll be. You'll be out of that with 1 loss or less. Right. And obviously, if you win both games, that'd be great. But sure. I'm not project. Obviously, the first game kind of is a big hurdle towards that. But
yeah, young Pablo in there says 5-0 start. I don't know if I'll go that far, but
ambitious. I like it though. If you go 5-0, we're having a really fun conversation about this.
Yeah, team. keep the good vibes coming. Keep the put it out there in the world, and hopefully it happens. But I think I'll go by on okay. the less than 1. And if we are there come week 6, we're in a very good position for the Clemson Tigers, and if we can keep the momentum going, we're in for a really good season. And that's really the goal this year. The goal is to get back to the ACC championship game. I think that's goal number 1 for Clemson this year, and then hopefully you can win that, and then get a shot at the playoffs and see if you can make some noise. What it looks like after that, I think is a mute point for the season. But I think if you can get back to the ACC championship game, hopefully win that, and then see what happens after that. I think you're in good shape and trending in the right direction if you're the Tigers.
I'm with you.
All right, that does it for our planned portion of the show, everybody. Fire up the comment section. Start getting your type in there. Get your fingers ready. Get your questions in here. Again, we got a ton of people in the live chat right now, 34 people. Ton of comments and questions have already been asked. If you want to be sure to get your comment read and responded to, be sure to hit that super chat feature and support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show. But without further ado, we are going to turn it over to the comment section, and we'll see what the people are talking about, Jordan.
Let's do it. Whew. You know what? We didn't star.
We did not star any.
We did not star any. So I'm going to just be doing this kind of blind. I'm just going to pick a random one. John is in the chat, our resident Michigan fan.
Yes, sir.
He says, my hunch would be Georgia 31, Clemson 21. Yeah, I think that's a very, very possible score.
Yep.
I think that's, and I don't. What is the point total for that game? I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know what the point total is.
I don't know, but I will look it up real quick while you are finding questions.
I am interested to see that because I don't have that off the top of my head. I know the spread, but I haven't paid attention to the point total and kind of how that's trended. See some people talking about Cade and Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And so, like, I do want to say this because I feel like this is a thing, a trend that we've kind of been – it's not – I don't think everyone does it, but I think it's I've seen it enough where it's like we got to talk about it. We can't keep comparing Cade to Trevor and Deshaun Watson, not from and not even saying like from a talent standpoint, but just from a situation standpoint. Like we can't. The reality is Deshaun Watson's and Trevor Lawrence's are not the norm, even from 5-star quarterbacks. Like as far as 5-star quarterbacks are concerned, I don't even think Deshaun was. He was a 5-star on some sites. I don't even know if he was a consensus 5-star, but
I don't think so.
Yeah, but still top 50 type, top 100 type player. Like I don't think we can, like some freshman quarterbacks come in and they just light the world on fire and they're ready to go. But even the 5-stars, that is not the norm. Like I think we hear more about the ones that are successful, but the reality is especially when you look at the other guys in Cade's quarterback class, he's actually ahead of a lot of them. Now you could attribute that to COVID evaluations and stuff, and I think that's a conversation to be had. But the reality is that Cade is not like I don't think Cade is necessarily behind schedule. He was behind where we had hoped he would be last year. That's the reality. But I don't necessarily think that he's behind from a point of like he's not going to be what Clemson needs him to be.
Yeah.
And so we can't compare him to Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence. I mean, one, different offense, different personnel, certainly from a skill position standpoint, even offensive line. Like obviously you didn't have the greatest offensive lines in the world while those two were there, but they were a lot more functional than the ones we've seen in recent years. And so I think when you include that, and then of course you had the crazy defenses. Your defense has still been pretty good, but we haven't been 2018 Clemson's defense in the last 3 years. So like I don't think we can make that comparison. I think Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence have ruined our perception of what most 5-star quarterbacks look like. They still have an adjustment period. Most of them do. And again, when you look at the guys in this, let me pull up that 2022 quarterback class because I just want to read some of the names. And Quinn Ewers was in that class too, but he reclassified if you remember. No, not draft class. Oh shoot. See, I'm pulling up to 24/7 because I want to go through this just so we can see where we're at. So here are the guys. You got Drew Aller, who just started his first year at Penn State last year.
Yeah.
He was statistically, he was slightly better than Cade. Wasn't great, and especially in the big games, Penn State struggled. Then you have Cade, you have Connor Wegman. Guy hasn't been able to stay healthy. I mean, he's expected to have a big year this year, but we haven't seen much from him. I can't say he's ahead of Cade. Ty Simpson doesn't play; he's not ahead of him. Devin Brown at Ohio State, he's not even. They brought in a transfer. They didn't believe he could be he was the starter. Will Howard has his job. Walker Howard at LSU, not a starter. Garrett Nussmeier is the guy. Gunnar Stockton. Nick Evers at Oklahoma hasn't seen the field. Malik Murphy didn't win the job at Texas, and he was behind Arch Manning. He was behind Arch Manning when he transferred to Duke. So he'll be a starter for the first full-time starter for the first time this year. Brady Allen at Purdue. Nope. Caden Hauser. Nope. Taven Jackson. Nope. Like I'm going through this list. Like you look at the list of guys, Cade is ahead of pretty much all of these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Jakari Brown. He's played some, hasn't looked good for Miami, and he I think he's transferred. Sam Horn doesn't play at Missouri. AJ Duffy, he transferred from Florida State. Zach Pyron, he played some for Georgia Tech. He had some moments, but he hasn't had a full year starting either. And Haynes King is the guy now. So Nate Johnson is getting ready to start his first year at Utah. So because you still have Cam Rising, but he's behind Cam Rising. So the reality is that when you compare Cade to his peers, he's actually ahead of pretty much all of them, other than maybe Drew Aller. And he was the number one. They were the number one and number two quarterback in the class, depending on where you look. So I think we need to kind of calm down with the comparisons of Cade and what Trevor and Deshaun did in their first year starting and what they were as freshmen. Like, it's not a comparable situation. And, the reality is Cade was a guy that needed more time. And we're going to have to, again, he needs to get to that point. So it doesn't mean like everything's cool. Like you still need to see that progression, but because he wasn't what Deshaun and Trevor were in their first years does not mean that, Cade wasn't worthy of his ranking or he's overrated. And I mean, that's what Brian hit on. And Brian has been as critical of the offense as anybody, but he understands that Cade is a work in progress, and he's not the 5-star quarterbacks that or really the 2 5-star quarterbacks that Clemson was used to.
Yeah, he wasn't. Cade didn't turn out to be a plug and play 5-star quarterback like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence.
And we learned that with DJ too.
DJ wasn't that, and DJ wasn't either. And DJ was a very, highly rated 5-star quarterback as well, and they just didn't work out. You're never going to just rattle off Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson over and over again. It's just not the reality. Unfortunately, the quarterback position is a very tough position to play, especially at the highest level of college football. And, we got spoiled, and, it's hard to kind of, go from Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and then, you're still recruiting 5-star quarterbacks and DJ and Cade, and they don't look like that. It's hard as fans, right? But you got to understand that most 5-star quarterbacks are never going to be like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. It's usually never plug and play like that. There's a few guys, but those guys are so few and far between. And I think sometimes, and even us, even me, sometimes we lose sight of that. I think, we okayed this season and see what he does, right? I think he's got some tools to work with now, right? and it's year 2 in a system, and you hope that he takes the next step forward as a year 2 starting quarterback, just like you would expect, right? But if you're expecting Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson level play, it's not happening. It ain't there.
Yeah, that's not.
It's never coming. I don't care if he plays for Clemson for 4 more years. That level of play is not coming out of Cade Klubnik, and that's
that can't be the expectation either, right?
Yeah, and that's no slight to Cade at all. He doesn't need to be that, I don't think, for this offense to be successful. So we just got to hope that the reports that we've heard come out of fall camp show themselves on the field this season. That's all we can hope for as fans. Because Cade, believe it or not, regardless of the spring game or anything else, he's the best option on that team at quarterback. So,
and it's been clear. Like I think, and it's become clear. I think in fall, like people were talking about Trent Pierman. Like I don't know if you guys like heard about the practice reports and the scrimmage notes, coming out, but Trent Pierman did not have a good day.
No.
Especially in that first scrimmage, he did like. And that's something we talked about ever since the spring game. Is the reality is as good as he looked, we can say, okay, well maybe we need to give him a closer look, but he is not. We're not there. We haven't seen every single practice. We haven't seen every rep he takes, and there's a reason why he's not, just the bona fide starter. He isn't. He's very limited athletically. He does not. He has by far the least amount of arm talent between the 3 guys in the room. Like I think he's a very smart player, but ultimately your goal and what you brought Garrett Riley in was to develop your 5-star and 4-star quarterback to eventually be high level starters for you. And so I think we needed to calm down on the we had to calm down on the Trent Pierman stuff. Like I think. It was an eye-opening performance. Okay, he's better than we thought. Like, we just thought, oh man, he's Danny Pierman's kid, and he was just the former walk-on. They like him. He was a good high school player, but never really. But we at least think that he has some ability, but it should have never extended to the point where he's our best option, because that's not what you brought Garrett Riley. You didn't bring Garrett Riley to develop Trent Pierman. You brought him in to develop Cade Klubnik and Christopher Vizina as well.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Young Pablo gets in here and says, exactly. See, how do you guys know Cade has improved? To your point, Young Pablo, we don't.
We don't.
We have no idea if Cade has improved or not. All we know are reports from the limited practice that the media members get to see and what they have said, and then what the coaches and the players tell us through interviews. That's all we know for sure, which is why me and Jordan have always taken the approach this entire offseason saying that we are cautiously optimistic that the offense will improve this season. And we've laid out the reasons that we think it could improve. Now, it could come week 1, week 2, week 3. We could be, 3-4 weeks into the season, and Cade Klubnik looks like the same old Cade Klubnik that he's always been, right? That is a possibility, right? There's also a possibility that he takes a step forward in year 2 of Garrett Riley's system and starts looking a bit more polished as a quarterback, right? We don't know for sure. All we know is there are some encouraging reports coming out of fall camp. And the one thing we do know is Cade's the best option at quarterback. So we, as fans, better hope he takes the next step forward and improves, because he's the best option. So if he doesn't take the next step, it's not looking good. So I don't think we're saying that definitively Cade has improved. We're hearing some encouraging things and hoping that it proves itself on the field this season.
Right. And that's the reality. Like I think 2 things can. I feel pretty confident that Cade is the best option, and who Clemson needs to be successful. And also say that I don't know if he's better. Like I don't know for sure that he's made that jump from last year.
Right.
So, that I think both of those things can be true.
Yeah, 100%. I think those are all good points. Tiggs gets in here and says, "Will the O-line be able to consistently slow down the pass rush?" Hey, Tiggs, therein lies the another huge question for the offense heading into 2024, right? How much improved is this offensive line going to be? How much can we expect for Matt Luke to be able to affect this offensive line? One, it's going to hinge on health of this offensive line. Can they stay healthy?
Yeah.
That'll be first and foremost.
That starting five, because
the starting five have to stay healthy. We cannot rely on some of this unproven depth at the offensive line position and be successful this year, I don't think. The other big question, I think, is at the center position. Ryan Lithicum is still ahead. Obviously, you got Harris Sewell there. You got Trent Howard there. Looks like Ryan Lithicum's going to be the guy starting the season. So how well does he play, right? How well do we fill that void that Will Putnam left as a multi-year starter for us? That's a huge hole to fill. So, again, I think with the offensive line, it really hinges on health and how well that center position comes along, especially early on in the season.
Absolutely. And I think getting, obviously being, being a right-handed quarterback, left tackle is absolutely paramount. So, Tristan Lay, taking that jump and he another former 5-star, the highest rated offensive lineman Clemson has ever signed. Either him or Jackson Cartman. I can't. I can't remember exactly. I think it's Tristan Lay because I feel like he was like 14th or 15th in the country, something like that overall. But I might be wrong about that. But still, former 5-star guy, guy that came in, had some developing to do, from his body and just a preparation standpoint. And now he got to the point last year where they put him in and he was a starter for most of the games, for the majority of the games. But he had some games where Colin Sadler came in and played. So now it's about, he is the guy. He is the guy that they are going to be relying on at left tackle. He needs to make that jump. And then Blake Miller on the opposite side, I think he needs to have a bounce back year. And that's, we talked about that in the BYOG or cell. Yeah. That's your tackle positions when we're talking about pass rush are paramount. And as you mentioned, the center position, if you're losing at center, you're going to get beat in everything you do. If you're losing reps at center, the play is dead a lot of the time, unless it's like a screen or something. Like you're getting blown up in the run game, and
you got no shot to run an offense. Period. If you're getting consistent pressure up the middle, it's impossible. You can't run an offense, because you have no time for any sort of play to develop whatsoever. So that center position is just paramount. Typically, that's the guy that calls out the protection. Typically, that's the guy that is making sure everybody in those 5 offensive linemen know the protection and know what they're doing. And he's the one that identifies blitzes a lot of times, along with the quarterback and things like that. But that center position is so paramount when it comes to anchoring an offensive line, and that's why it's such an important position. And you feel good when you got a multi-year starter there, and like this year heading into 2024, we don't feel great because regardless of who starts, it's going to be their first year starting at center, and there's always growing pains specifically with that position along the offensive line.
Second time in a row we're opening up with a new center against Georgia. Good times.
Yeah. Not really what you want to do, but again,
I think you're in a better position this time around. But still, it's not great.
Georgia has a great defensive line, but thankfully their 2024, at least the interior part of their defensive line, is not what it was when we opened up with them last time.
Yeah,
thankfully. Not that it's bad.
It's still pretty good, but
they're still really good.
There's no Jordan Davis or Devontae Wyatt on that defensive line.
don't have those dudes out there anymore, thankfully. But
good Lord, man.
They still got 5 stars rolling through like it's nobody's business. So still offensive line's going to have their work cut out for them. That is for sure. I pulled up the lines for the Georgia game because you were asking for them earlier, Jordan, and it's a 14-point. We are a 14-point dog right now. Georgia, according to ESPN, has an 82.3% chance of winning the game, and the over/under point total is 49.5 for the game.
Yeah,
so, not a crazy high scoring game. Being predicted. So we'll see.
We shall see.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun game to watch. Noon kickoff. At least we won't have to sit around all day waiting on the game. We're going to get it. We're going to get it done nice and early.
Good or bad.
Yeah, it'll either catapult us into an amazing day, or we'll
kind of put a cloud over everything.
Stewing for the rest of the day in week 1. So.
Tiggs asks, how do you get a half a point? You don't, but that's how they said it because you have
betting lines.
Yeah, those are betting lines. So you have to pick an over or an under. So it avoids a push or like getting the exact total. Now that doesn't they don't always set it depending on what the actual thing you're betting on is. They don't always set it at a half, but when it comes to point totals, they always set it at a half, so you have to bet over or under, because otherwise you would get a lot of pushes and people just getting their money back. And the house doesn't want to be giving people their money back; they want to be making.
They want to take,
they want to take
you into making bad choices and get your money.
So there's no such thing as half a point, but that's the idea. All right, let's see. How thrilling would a Clemson win in Atlanta be? Oh man, I mean, it would be the biggest win Clemson's had in about 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
It'd be massive. And from it and one of the and honestly, it would I think it would go down as one of the best in I think when you consider the circumstances and what Clemson is coming off of, a win over Georgia, especially if it parlays into a playoff appearance, ACC championship, like we would go back and talk about that game. It's like, okay, that's the game that kind of turned the program back around in the right direction, and the Dabo Swinney era 2.0 is kicked off.
It would kind of be talked about in the same breath as like that LSU game.
Yeah.
In the what was
the Chick-fil-A Bowl? Yeah.
The Chick-fil-A Bowl, right? The 4th and 16 and all the crazy stuff that happened and went into that win, and you look at that LSU win, and that really catapulted the Dabo Swinney era, and really when Clemson kind of took that next step when it came to the progression of Clemson football.
Or an even better comparison, like to make it a regular season game, it would be kind of maybe that 2011 Auburn game. The Auburn team didn't end up being that good, but they were the defending national champions. Like that was a turning point,
huge game
in the program.
A game you were expected to lose, and you pulled it out.
Yeah, I think that would be a good one. Or 2015 Notre Dame, 2013 Georgia was a massive win.
Yes, that was a big one as well.
But I think it would have a chance to exceed like
that was 2013. That was big. That was right after that LSU win, right?
Yeah,
that was that next.
That was that next 2013. That's the one that when everyone plays, rubbing the rock and running down the hill like that. Like they love using that one from that that Georgia game because it was we still had the balloons that was and everything. That was
I miss
pretty
it.
electric. Yeah, me too. Man, Sammy Watkins went crazy in that game.
Insane.
Good times. Taj Boyd, Aaron Murray going back and forth. That was
that was an incredible game.
Good times. Todd Gurley running all over us. Good times.
Yeah.
Massive win, and obviously, they go on, win 11 games, beat Ohio State in the Orange Bowl. Obviously, the Florida State and South Carolina losses were massive black marks. But you lost get blown out by 37 points. I hate to bring up those memories, but getting blown out by 37 points at home, and then turning around and finishing the year losing to the Gamecocks for fifth year in a row.
Yeah.
Man, going to school after that. So
that Florida State game, I'll never forget that game.
Yeah, that happened on my college roommate's his birthday. That game was played on his birthday.
I mean, it was miserable.
Yeah,
I remember. I think I was stationed in Texas at the time, and me and a bunch of buddies went to one of the restaurants or sports bars or whatever, and we were watching it, and I was just I walked out. I went outside by myself. I was just I'm not doing this. This is horrible.
I was sick to my stomach, man.
From the jump. I mean, it was just wow. Okay. Yeah, we do not belong on this field right now. But yeah.
I think that's still the most that's probably the most dead I've ever felt inside. Well, I don't want to say after a Clemson. There's a couple contenders.
Yeah,
that one. Obviously losing the fifth straight to. Honestly, the 2012 loss at home, with Dylan Thompson coming in for Connor Shaw, that one broke me because I was that was a game we should have won, and we turned the. I mean, that was a trend in those years, but man, the turnovers. And then Dylan Thompson, beating us for a game. Oh man. Now I'm having PTSD, but losing the fifth year in a row was that sucked. And then more recently, the 2022 South Carolina game is a permanent scar, just because of everything that you lost. You lost it. You lost your playoff spot. You lost the 40-game home winning streak. You lost the winning streak against South Carolina, and in the fashion that you lost. Yeah, we should just we could have a whole show about our worst moments as sort of kind of venting therapy type of thing. Our worst moments.
Rehashing the heartbreak of Clemson football, especially in those days, man. It was brutal at times, and some of them you never really get over. You never really forget them. They're rough.
I mean, some early runs like Boston College back in when Matt. Oh my God, the Boston College game from 2007. That one lives in my brain.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that was brutal.
I hated Matt Ryan so much. I hated him so much.
Jacob, have a good night. Good luck at work, buddy. Hope you have a good one. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Appreciate you, man. Man, the 2010. What was that? That was the 2010 Miami game that you lost in overtime. But I think you played a couple overtime games against Miami. The one that Kyle Parker went and won in 2009, that was fun.
Yep.
No, it wasn't 2010. It was earlier than that because the Kyle Parker game happened after. Was it 2006? Yeah. That was one of an earlier. That's one of my earliest memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some bad ones for sure. The loss in the ACC championship to Georgia Tech, the one that they vacated. CJ Spiller had the game of his life, and my buddy was at that game. he said one of the things he always remembers is seeing CJ Spiller crying in the tunnel after the game. And
I remember him sitting on the sideline, like on the bleacher or on the bench, just like completely beside himself after the game. It's funny. I just last night, just scrolling YouTube and, going down the rabbit hole of college football videos, a highlight reel popped up of CJ Spiller in that Georgia Tech game, the ACC championship game where we lost. And it was just a highlight reel of all his like biggest plays that day. And, it's crazy thinking back to that season and how injured he was with the turf toe all year and struggling with that. And just watching those highlights last night of him just going crazy in that game. And it wasn't enough. Like it just fell short. Was super disappointing, but he left it all out on the field that day. That was an insane game.
Yeah. The only loss that Clemson's ever suffered in the ACC championship game, by the way.
Yep. The only one.
Good times.
Couldn't close the deal.
Hope. I had one. Tiggs. Actually, I want to answer this one from Jay. He says, how many yards does Moffitt need for you to think we'd beat Georgia? Ooh, that's a good question. I think I don't want to go that far because I think that's unrealistic. Georgia, the way Georgia plays, like they're not going to let you consistently like just run it down your throat. Like unless like the offensive line has like this massive improvement, I don't see a world where that happens.
Yeah. I think he's got to go over 100.
I think so. I think
he's got to go north of 100.
Yeah,
just to keep that, because Georgia's the type of defense they're going to come after you, and like you said, they're going to try to take away that run. But you have like Clemson has to have success on the ground to keep Georgia honest. They can't just like. The last thing you can do against a Georgia defense is become one-dimensional. They'll eat you alive. They'll absolutely eat you alive.
I think one of the things I think you have to limit the losses, the tackles for loss. Like I think you can't let them get in the backfield because the way Georgia is going to play defense, they're going to limit. Like you're not going to get you're not going to get a ton of chunk runs, just pounding the rock, unless you really because. Even though they don't even really load, they play with light boxes, but because they have so much speed and athleticism up front and in the linebacker position, like they really like they force teams like it's like okay, you're going to have to run it, but we're still good enough to stop you.
And they're gonna what Georgia's going to do is they're going to force you to go east and west, not north and south, right? Like they want you, they want to get you running towards the sideline, right? And then they're going to trust their athleticism at the linebacker and secondary positions to absolutely run you out of bounds. They're going to trust their defensive athleticism. So they're going to stop you up the middle. They're going to force you to hit the edge, and then they're going to trust their athletic ability on defense and their speed to shut that down. Yeah.
And so I think I don't know if there's a specific yardage total, but I think a limit tackles for loss in the run game.
Yeah.
Like if you can't get 5 or 6, get 2 or 3, because I think even like getting to 2nd and 7 still forces Georgia to respect the possibility that you can run, that you're going to run.
And the Garrett Riley offense, it really is a rhythm offense, right?
Yeah.
So Clemson's going to have to stay, on schedule. They're going to have to stay ahead of the chains because, I mean, you get into, a 2nd and long, a 3rd and long. I mean, that Georgia defense is going to pin their ears back and they're going to come after you. And it's going to turn into a long day. If you're consistently behind the chains against that defense, it's going to turn into a long day. So you have to find a way to your point, to get those yards, whether it's 2 yards, 3 yards, just eliminating negative plays. I think you make a really good point there because the last thing you want to do is play behind the chains against a team like Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're Clemson and you haven't been explosive in some time.
Yeah.
So the idea that you're just going to produce all these explosive plays, probably a pipe dream, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you have to stay. So I mean, that's ultimately what it is staying ahead of it. So, no negative gains, and obviously because the last time you played, you got sacked 7 times, and you ran. I think you ran for 9 yards total. So like that, that can't happen. You're not beating if that's a non-starter. You have to produce some semblance of a run game, and like that you're going to run and you're going to get some yardage.
You gotta have a respectable outing on the ground, because if you don't make Georgia respect the run, they're going to pin their ears back, and
the game is over if they don't respect your run game. The game is over.
Worst day ever for Cade.
Yeah.
And especially that offensive line, because they'll just dial up pressure after pressure and they'll overwhelm them.
Absolutely.
And it'll turn into a sack fest, and a negative play fest, and it'll get out of hand very quickly. So you cannot allow that to happen.
And I think that's and I think that's what you saw from the teams that ran successfully on I mean, Georgia Tech popped a couple of explosive runs.
Yeah.
But I think what Alabama did, and they utilized Jalen Milroe in his legs a good bit, but they created some running like they didn't have a ton of like super long touchdown runs, but they were instead of getting stuffed on first down, they got 3 or 4. Like there's a massive difference between 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11, and 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7. And it opens up the play calling and what you can do. And as a guy like Garrett Riley that wants to have a lot of different things, different formations, and different things for different situations, it makes it so much easier when he's not having to. It's like, okay, we just got stuffed on second and on 1st and 10, and now we're 2nd and 11, and everybody knows we're going to pass because we're not going to try that again. Like, so, and that's just part of not being predictable. And that's what Clemson was a lot of times last year because, limitations in personnel and all the stuff we've talked about. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question in a roundabout, but not really answer your question, Jay, which I'm sorry, but I do think, like, if I had to put a number on it, I don't want to say 100 because I feel like the per carry number wouldn't be high enough. It depends. Like if he ran for 20 times, like he gets like 80, 88. Like if you could get like 4.5 yards per carry, ideally, like I think that would be enough to at least make Georgia respect it. You wouldn't have it wouldn't look great on the total. But it would be enough that Georgia would have to respect the possibility of you running. So I think that's ultimately what I think that's ultimately where you have to be.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be tough sledding, but Clemson somehow has to create some plays in the running game. But again, it's a lot easier said than done against a defense like Georgia. So, especially when you got an offensive line who has struggled like Clemson's has, and it's not going to be easy. So they got their work cut out for them, but they have to figure out a way to at least create some balance there and run the ball somewhat effectively against the Georgia defense. I can't hear you.
Oh, my fault.
Okay.
I was muted. Fun question from Larry. This will be the last one. We're already hitting the 2.5 hour mark. He says, if you had 3 wishes to improve our football team, players and position coaches going into the season, what will you change, if any? Can I use multiple wishes on one? On one? No, but that's a really good question. I think quarterback. I think the improvement at quarterback is paramount first and foremost. So I mean, I'm using at least one wish on Cade.
Yeah.
Then I think it's the next logical conclusion is offensive line. And then like, what do you? I think the third wish is where I don't know where to exactly put it, because
if I was doing your third wish, I would say health.
Yeah.
Because
I'm with you. I think that's
from a health standpoint, Clemson, that's been a big part of our stumbles the past 3 seasons. Not all of them. There's a lot of reasons, and we outlined them pretty well in this show, I think, for the most part. But health is so huge, man, especially along that offensive line. I think we got some really talented guys that are going to run out there first. But if they can't stay healthy, it's going to be a long season again, regardless. Same thing at the wide receiver position. Same thing at the cornerback position. We're not real deep at the edge position either. So health for this team, I think, is going to be really important. Because depth, I think, can become an issue for this Clemson team quickly. If there starts being too much attrition, especially at those positions I mentioned. So I would definitely go health with that third one.
I think I'm going to agree, because I do think, some Clemson fans would say receiver, but I'm kind of banking on, you get improved play from Cade and the offensive line. I think the receiver play will be there. I mean, I've been vocal about how I feel about this room. I mean, I think it's going to prove itself to be really good. But so I'm going to bank on my projection on that one and save that final wish for just stay healthy, because ultimately that's going to improve the wide receiver room anyway, because that's been their bugaboo, their biggest one at least. So maybe like if I did pick one, if I did pick the receivers, I would specify blocking. I want to see good blocking. Perimeter blocking. I think that would be a good choice, but I think health is the right decision, because I think they'll be better from a blocking standpoint, just naturally from another year of doing it, I guess. And hopefully that is enough to see the improvement that Tyler Grisham is making, and maybe it'll take some heat off of him from the fans. So, I think I'm with you.
Yeah. Yep. I think we nailed that. But that'll be the last question for the night. We are right up against the 2.5 hour mark, guys. It has been a fantastic show. Again, thanks to Brian for being a part of the show for the first hour and chopping it up with us and breaking down the upcoming season for the Clemson Tigers and where we think we stand as of August 16th, heading into the season. We did our over-under prediction and all that stuff. Again, all the timestamps for the topics we covered today will be in the description of this video immediately following the video. Thank you guys so much for showing up tonight. It's been an amazing show. You guys have been killing it in the comments section. Always love to see you guys in there interacting with each other. We got 39 people in the live chat right now. If you have not already, please hit that like button on the way out for us and consider subscribing to the show. Again, me and Jordan do the All-In Show right here every Friday, 5:30 p.m. Be sure to go to Brian's channel, Clemson Football Live, and show him some love over there. Subscribe to his channel, comment on him over there, and make sure that you thank him for copping over to our channel and sharing his views on the Tigers with us tonight.
Absolutely, man. Great show. I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I feel like this one's an A+. And I think it's solely the curve from having Brian on. But I'll take it. Listen, I was a physics major in college. I'll take an A whenever I can get it.
all day, and twice on Sunday. We'll take an A wherever we can get it, whether it's Brian's heading up the group project or not. Guess what? We all got an A anyway, so it really don't matter. But with that said, guys, next week, Friday, 5:30 p.m., we will be breaking down the Clemson versus Georgia matchup. We'll give our predictions. We'll give our score predictions. And rest assured, we have a very big guest coming on next week. It will be none other than Uncle Lou coming on the show to preview Georgia versus Clemson. That's next Friday, 5:30 p.m. Spread it all over everywhere. Make sure you guys are here. And it's going to be another great show next week as we preview the Georgia-Clemson game.
Absolutely, and I'm super excited for that one as well. Man, two banger shows.
Two bangers back to back, man. I don't know how we pulled it off, but I'm excited for it. And what a way to kick off the 2024 season. And we got a full head of steam heading into the season, especially here on the All In Show. So thank you guys for being here. Until next time, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Go Tigers.
Later, y'all.